Hey, how's it going everyone? You're watching Underdog Gaming, here at the beginner's guide for Abigail. Now I'm gonna be honest, last time I recorded this, all the data got corrupted, so I had to do it all over again. I got my fingers crossed that this time it works, so please cross your fingers with me. I hope this recording works. Let's go ahead and break down Abigail step by step. So first off, we have the normal attacks. I'm gonna start with the punches, then the kicks, and then end with the jumping attacks. So first off, we have standing light punch. Pretty good range, not very fast though, actually 5 frames of startup. So not the greatest punish tool, but still really good range. Also a decent anti-air as well. The anti-air jabs, still a problem in this game. So still a pretty dang good normal, has good range, decent speed, not the fastest, but good on block. Actually very good on block, and has a target combo follow-up. It's jab jab. Both versions can actually be cancelled into a special move, and both versions are both +3 on block. So not a big deal if the opponent blocks it, no risk in that regard, but you do push the opponent further away, so be warned about that. It's harder to cancel into a move if you push the opponent further away. So if I do this, for example, and try to do the machine gun punch, or Abigail punch, doesn't actually work, won't actually reach. So be warned when doing that. It is good damage though, look at that. 67, that's about the same as a medium attack, so the trade-off is damage, but you do push the opponent further away. Just keep that in mind. Next up we have crouching light punch. This attack actually has better range than its standing version, but it's a little bit slower. It's 6 frames of startup. Just like the standing version, it has a light punch target combo, which behaves more or less the same. It's same on block, but also pushes the opponent further away. It's mainly good for damage, right? Not so much for combos, but still a great tool to have in your arsenal. Honestly, both these jabs make Abigail very tough to get in on for a lot of aggressive characters, so it's important to utilize both very often. Next up we have standing medium punch. This is your go-to combo starter. You can follow it up with either standing light kick or back heavy punch. Now back heavy punch is a bit harder for a follow-up, but it cancels into the medium Abigail punch for extra damage, so that's your benefit there. Whereas the light kick of course can only do light Abigail punch. So that's the trade-off there. Let me go ahead and show you both combos real quick. These are your bread and butter combos. I also want to mention that standing medium punch is actually +5 on block, so it's great for frame traps. If your opponent blocks it, you can go for a jab and they have to respect it. You can also go for a command grab if you're close enough. It's really good for pressuring the opponent. Crouching medium punch has fantastic range. It's also good for canceling into his Nitro Run, right? Because it's got great range, either on hit or block, you can cancel into that run and scare the opponent. It's also just a great footsie tool, great for outpoking the opponent, very good. You can also cancel it into a special move, but the range might not be there for most of your special moves, which is why I recommend the Nitro Run, right? Because it's always going to cancel properly, and you can always go for your mix-up. Oh, I love that command grab so much. So true to the Final Fight games. A lot of fun. And next up we have Heavy Punch. This attack is actually unsafe if done up close, but if done at a bit of a distance, it's actually relatively safe. So don't be afraid to throw it out there in the footsie game, especially because it has a crush counter for a lot of damage. In fact, this move is actually how you want to punish a DP if you block it. If you block any invincible reversal, this is your go-to way to get a high damaging crush counter combo. And once again though, don't do it up close, it's pretty unsafe. In the crouching version, crouching heavy punch, you won't use that often. I guess it could be a decent anti-air, and it's a great way to extend combos after V-trigger activation, so if I get like a heavy and I want to cancel, it can be good for that. For sure, right? Definitely good for that. But outside of those rare instances, I don't find myself doing crouching heavy punch very often. It's also very unsafe on block, so don't ever do it up close outside of a combo. It's really only good for hit confirms. Okay, that's it for the punches, so let's move on to the kicks. First off, we have standing light kick. It's great for combo after standing medium punch and a decent footsie tool as well. The crouching version is actually your fastest normal, it's 4 frames. So this is your go-to punish if you're blocking an attack that's just barely -4. Here's your punish into Abigail Punch. The light Abigail Punch or the EX version, the medium or the heavy will not combo in these instances, so you want to make sure to do either light or EX Abigail Punch, and that's a great punish. It's 4 frames, your fastest normal. No 3-frame normals for Abigail, but that's okay, he's big and has really good range and some of the highest damage in the game. Actually, arguably the highest damage output in the game as long as you have his resources available, so it's not that bad that he has no 3-frame normals. And next up we have standing medium kick. Not much to say about this normal. I don't use it very often, I don't see it used by competitive players, it's just not a very useful normal. The crouching version, on the other hand, very good range, hits low, and can be special cancelled, so there are some utilities for it. It's not as good of range as standing medium punch, but that can be a good thing if you're looking to cancel into Abigail Punch. I'm pretty sure if this medium kick can reach, then so can Abigail Punch, so it's good for that example, right? It's good if you're trying to gauge how close you are. If the medium kick hits at all, I'm pretty sure it'll still cancel into Abigail Punch and reach. Oh, nope, never mind. It just barely doesn't reach sometimes. But it's still better for gauging your distance than standing medium punch. It's better for canceling into special moves also than standing medium punch. Not as much pushback. Keeps you a bit closer to the opponent. And then there's standing heavy kick. This tool's kind of interesting. It's not quite as good as like standing heavy punch for a footsie tool, but it does do good damage and knocks the opponent down. So there's some utility right there, right? You want to knock the opponent down? Pretty good tool. It's also good for crush counters, so that's a thing. You can't combo after it though, it just does extra damage and builds some V gauge, but you won't actually combo after a crush counter heavy kick. And then we have the sweep, the crouching heavy kick. This attack is a weird beast, so it has great range, which makes it great for comboing after his V skill. If you don't want to do the walk forward crouching heavy punch, which is a bit tougher to do, you can just do V skill and then crouching heavy kick into V trigger and then get some damage, because the first hit is V trigger cancelable, so you can extend combos that way. Or start off combos that way as well if you're trying to whiff punish the opponent. Now I want to mention, only the second hit is actually low. Both hits will crush counter, so it builds a lot of V gauge, but only the second hit is actually low. The first hit is a mid, so keep that in mind. It's not a true low on both hits, just the second hit. And last but not least, we have the jumping attack. So first up we have jumping light kick. This can be good for tick throws, although it's a bit more complicated and difficult than most grapplers. I find a lot of the time I do it too early and my throw just whiffs, and I don't know what the deal is with that. I just can't get it to work a lot of the time, like in that instance. Maybe I'm not close enough is what the real issue is. It's tough to gauge how close you are with Abigail. It's going to take a lot of practice to know when you're actually within throw range. Because right here you might think, oh, throw range. You're totally wrong. How about here? Nope, still not here. I'm stepping on his foot and I still can't throw him. Gotta be even closer still. Learning the throw range with Abigail is something you really have to get accustomed to. Now if you want to go for a cross up, then you want jumping medium kick. Jumping medium kick is your go-to cross-up, although once again he has a very shallow jump, so it's a bit tricky to cross up with Abigail in the first place. You can only do it if you're right in the opponent's face and they already blocked something and then you want to go for it. Otherwise it's pretty tough to get that cross-up, but you can definitely go for it. And then you have jumping heavy kick. It has slower startup, but a lot of range and good damage as well, so good for starting off combos at a distance, right? Very good for that if you want to get that cheap poke into the run mix up, right? Oh, now within range, but you get the idea of what I was going for there. Now, if you want to trade with an air-to-air, then you want to actually do jumping heavy punch. It's also a decent jump in as well, but if you trade in the air with this, it actually puts the opponent in a juggle state. And once in that juggle state, you can either do crouching heavy punch into run and then punch them that way, or you can just run in general. A lot of the time I see a lot of players just do heavy Abigail punch, maybe they'll do back heavy punch, or they'll just run and do the punch right away. Nitro run into punch. There's a lot of different follow-ups, but the point is the heavy version will trade in the air-to-air and put the opponent in a juggle state. It's also a decent jump in as well. Alright dogs, that's it for his normal, so let's go ahead and move on to his unique attacks. Now we already discussed his jab combos, so I'm not going to go into any more detail with those. You already know enough about these target combos. So let's go ahead and start off with his forward heavy punch. Forward heavy punch is a decent anti-air and gets different properties during V-trigger, but we're going to discuss that more later on. We're not going to get into that just yet. The point is, pretty decent anti-air and a good follow-up after certain wall bounces. So if I do EX command grab, it can be a good follow-up, although not in the corner, that's a bad example. It's not fast enough there. So it combos in cases like that, although I prefer crouching heavy punch in that situation, but forward heavy punch combos on airborne opponents. It's also good after trading an air heavy punch to put the opponent in a falling juggle state. You can actually do forward heavy punch into heavy Abigail punch if you want to. That's one of your options. Now back heavy punch is actually a very interesting beast. It's unsafe on block, and I should mention that forward heavy punch actually is not. It's safe on block. Back heavy punch is unsafe on block, but it actually destroys projectiles, so it's very useful in that regard. Plus, the first hit is actually special cancelable, so if you want to go into medium Abigail punch, you certainly can. This makes it very important for comboing after standing medium punch like we saw earlier. Or if you prefer, you can actually do back heavy punch, heavy punch. This is no longer special cancelable, but it is super cancelable, and V-trigger cancelable as well. So I can cancel into V-trigger, and then actually go forward again if my timing's good. I didn't time it well there, but you can actually do it twice in a row if you want to, or you can just go straight into super. Once again, no longer special cancelable, but certainly can be canceled into super, so make sure to always keep that in mind. And last but not least, we have the overhead, just forward medium punch. Decent overhead, unsafe on block, so be careful when using it. You want to do a lot of low attacks to get the opponent nervous, and then start throwing in your overhead. Don't just throw it out willy-nilly. You don't want to do that. Also, the range is not as good as it appears. See, I'm clearly hitting Ryu, but I'm not actually hitting him, so it's not as great as it looks. Still very good range, but not as good as it appears, so make sure to learn that distance when doing the overhead attack. That's it for his unique attacks, so let's move on to his special moves now. First off, we have Abigail Punch. Now every version of Abigail Punch is unsafe on block, so make sure to always combo into it. The light version does the least damage but has really good range and is fast on startup. The medium version does more damage but is slower on startup, so it has to be medium or higher. Now the heavy version is interesting. It's actually for anti-airs. It's for airborne opponents, so if you want to combo after an air attack, that's what it's for. Or it's also for opponents who are jumping. It can also work in that instance. It actually does more damage on airborne opponents than on grounded opponents, and its startup is relatively fast, just like the light version. So the medium version is actually the slowest and does the most damage on grounding opponents. The heavy version does more damage on airborne opponents, especially during a combo. Now the EX version actually does the most damage and has fast startup as well, so it's the best of both worlds. Also, it's worth mentioning that if you mash the punch button, you actually get more damage for every version of Abigail Punch. That's important to keep in mind. And next up we have Abigail Smash. This is your go-to command grab, and it behaves the same as other command grabs in Street Fighter V. The light version has the best range, but does the least damage. The medium version has the shorter range, but does more damage. The heavy version has the shortest range, but does the most damage. And that's typical of most command grabs in this game. So make sure to learn the different distances, because this command grab range isn't that great, but the damage definitely makes up for it, especially the heavy version. Now the EX version is where things get interesting. It actually does less damage, but you can combo after it because of a wall splat. I typically do crouching heavy punch into heavy Abigail punch. That's my go-to combo, although there are certainly others you can do instead. Abigail is actually a very creative character when it comes to his combos. And next up we have Abigail Flip. This attack is very interesting because every version is actually safe or plus on block with the exception of the EX version. So the light version is actually neutral, it's 0 on block. It also deflects projectiles and does decent damage, hits twice. Pretty good way to end certain combos as well, so it's always safe to throw out there. The medium version can actually hop over projectiles and does a bit more damage, but the startup is obviously much slower. However, it's +1 on block, so that's a good advantage of it being slower. If the opponent respects it and blocks it, you're still at frame advantage. The heavy version is very interesting. It does a lot of damage, right? The most damage of any of the attacks. Is a bit slower on startup, but has more range and more likely to go over fireballs, and most importantly of all, it's +2 on block. So if the opponent actually blocks this, look what I can do. I can actually go for a medium command grab setup. I'm actually at +2 and the command grab is 5 frames, so I actually have a really good chance of throwing the opponent there unless they jump away. And if they do try to jump away, I can do things like crouching heavy punch or standing heavy punch if I make that read. So it's always important to put your opponent in that situation. If they block the heavy version, go for a command grab, or go for a heavy punch to knock them out of the sky. You could even do forward heavy punch in that instance and it'd be very useful. Just make sure to always do the medium version. The light version will still reach, but it's not the right amount of damage, and the heavy version actually won't reach, even if you're right in the opponent's face. So I always go for the medium version. It's the best of both worlds. Although if you want the extra damage, you could always go for the EX command grab as well. Now the EX version is also quite interesting. It launches the opponent for a short combo and does decent damage as well. However, it's the only version that's not plus on block. It is safe, but it's not plus, it's minus, so the opponent gets the advantage after blocking it. I apologize if earlier I said it was unsafe. It's actually not unsafe, it's just not plus. It's minus on block. However, it can be cancelled after things like crouching heavy punch. Although, that's a bit tricky to do. A lot of the time you'll get EX Abigail Punch by accident, so you have to go into training mode and practice that combo quite a lot for both punishing the opponent and for V-trigger cancels as well. So make sure to learn it. Also, a really odd fact about this move, if you just keep pushing the punch button, he'll just repeatedly keep slamming the ground. And in the corner, if the opponent doesn't quick rise, this will hit up to 14 times. So it's a great way to really bully beginners or characters who are new at the game, players who just bought the game and you want to make them return at the GameStop. Just keep hitting them. I guess it's just 11 times. I feel like one time I made it go for 14. Maybe I pushed the wrong button there. I feel like it does work 14 times. But if the opponent quick rises, it will not combo more than after the initial hit. But if they don't, you can just keep hitting them with it. It's pretty ridiculous. Okay, how long can we go? 13? Okay, it seems to vary a lot, but I think I've gotten 14 hits before. The point is, if it's a new player and they don't know what's going on, you can really bully them with that. But if it's a player who knows what they're doing, it's not going to work. It will not work on smart players, but still a fun fact to keep in mind about that move. And last but not least, we have Nitro Run. This attack is the game of rock, paper, scissors. Now the run itself actually has armor, although the follow-up attacks do not, and if you do nothing, you will always get the punch follow-up. So if I press punch, pretty decent move. Safe on block if I space it correctly, but very punishable if I do it up close. But it will catch opponents who are trying to jump, which is important if you want to go for the command grab. The command grab is just normal throw during the run and does pretty dang good damage, so it's worth keeping in mind. In fact, I almost always go for the command grab first. I use the run to absorb a hit, and then I go for the throw. Once they start jumping, I catch them with the punch. If the opponent throws fireballs, you can press kick to jump over it and get a double hitting overhead. This is actually a pretty consistent way to get over fireballs, and it's fast, and it's an overhead that'll catch players jumping. So it's an all-around useful tool, but it's unsafe on block, so it's a big risk on your end. Now the EX version is very interesting. It increases the damage of all of your attacks, and also gives you 2 hits of armor during the run instead of just 1. So that's important to keep in mind, especially for his command grab. Look at this damage. Oh, 240. That's more than his heavy command grab, so that's some pretty scary stuff. 220, I got 240 for 1 bar. Pretty scary stuff. Very scary damage, so make sure to always keep that in mind. His Nitro Run is a lot of fun. Oh, there's one more thing you can do though, I almost forgot. You can do his V-skill out of it. So you can punish regular attacks by doing his normal V-skill, or punish low attacks by doing his crouching V-skill. Those are both 2 options that you have. Oh, actually one last thing to mention. If you press back and the run at the same time, you actually roll backwards. Although it's pretty tricky to do. You have to make sure you hold back and press it right when you do the buttons. That way you roll backward. It's actually better than his backdash as far as a retreat option, but you don't want to be too predictable because the recovery isn't that fast, so the opponent could do an EX projectile, especially Ryu or Gale, could actually punish you for rolling backwards. That being said, it is still better than his backdash. Okay, that's it for his special moves, so let's move on to his V system. Now Abigail's V skill is actually pretty straightforward. The regular version will parry high attacks and even jump-ins, whereas the crouching version will parry low attacks. However, your ability to combo after these parries is where things get complicated. If you want to go for a simple parry, you can just do his crouching heavy kick and the V-trigger cancel and get a pretty damaging combo that way. If you don't have V-trigger available, you actually want to do a micro walk, so just walk forward for a little bit, then do crouching heavy punch and cancel into Abigail Punch. Or if you want to keep things really simple, you can cancel into his Nitro Run and just do the punch. That's also some pretty solid damage, especially if you do the EX version. Oh, and I also forgot to mention earlier that his EX Nitro Run punch actually crumples the opponent, allowing you to go for a follow-up. So in conclusion, Abigail's V-skill is pretty simple and straightforward, although its timing is somewhat difficult for both the parry and comboing after it. So I don't use this V-skill that often, but it's very important to keep in mind that you always have it as an option, especially after his Nitro Run, or if the opponent's trying to jump in on you. And next up we have Abigail's V-trigger. Now his V-trigger is both simple and complicated at the same time, so if I forget to cover anything, please post it down in the comments below, because there's actually a lot more to his V-trigger than meets the eye. So first things first, it actually gives armor to the stance of his run. Not just the running part anymore, but the stance itself actually now gets armor. That's a pretty big deal to keep in mind. Not to mention you can now charge all of his heavy punches. So standing heavy punch now causes the crumple on the opponent. It also does more damage than it used to as well. Not to mention while charging all of these heavy attacks, you actually get armor to the heavy attacks themselves, so the opponent can't actually interrupt you unless they throw you. The forward heavy punch when charged actually causes the wall bounce, which is a good way to extend combos, although I did a very bad job of showing it there. There you go, just do heavy Abigail Punch. You can also do a charged down heavy punch or a charged back heavy punch, but it's a bit tougher to do. So I usually go for heavy Abigail Punch instead, since it's more reliable. Charging back heavy punch actually does more damage and launches the opponent very high into the air. So you can do either a light Abigail Punch, or you can do an EX Abigail Punch, or even do a critical art. In fact, if your timing is really good, you can actually do a second back heavy punch as long as you charge it for a little bit. So that means you can do 2 charged back heavy punch target combos in a row for a ton of crazy damage, and actually cancel that into V-trigger for some really good damage. But it's very tough to do, so I don't think it's viable in an actual match, but it is an option to actually do a fully charged back heavy punch, then a slightly charged second one, but man, it's really tough. I'm trying to do it right now, and I'm struggling. There we go. And then you can do super right there, actually. He's already stunned because it does so much damage that you can actually do super right there for some crazy high damage. It's nuts. So if you really want to main Abigail, that's something to keep in mind. You can always do that as an option, and it's just nuts. I should also mention that all these attacks, when fully charged, actually have guard break on the opponent as well. So if you try to block it, you can actually open them up for a full combo. Although the combo won't do very much damage, it's going to scale very heavily, but all these attacks when fully charged actually break the opponent's armor. Another awesome thing about being in V-trigger is your back heavy punch when fully charged now reflects projectiles, which is pretty nuts. In fact, you may not have to fully charge it. Let's see real quick. Go ahead and throw it, Ryu. So So if you charge it for just a little bit, you can reflect it. But here's the even crazier part. You can actually reflect super moves, as long as they're still projectiles. Check this crazy shit out. Right back at you, Ryu. Now it's a little bit tough to time, right? Don't get me wrong. You can actually activate V-Trigger on reaction to the super, and still have time to fully charge your heavy punch and reflect it, but the timing is pretty tricky. And it's great against players who don't understand the Abigail matchup yet. Oh, and it's also worth mentioning that I'm pretty sure all attacks during his Nitro charge actually do more damage now as well. But let's go ahead and see about that. Yes, they in fact do. So everything you do now actually does more damage in your Nitro Run. In fact, if you do EX Nitro Run and V-Trigger, you get even more damage. Look at this command grab damage. Oh my gosh, 276? That might be the most damaging command grab in the game outside of Zangief's super. That's some pretty nuts stuff, right? It makes your mix-up game even deadlier. Not to mention the EX Run already has 2 hits of armor during the run, and then V-Trigger actually gives you armor during the stance, so that's 3 hits of armor during the stance and the run itself. Lots of armor for Abigail when he has V-Trigger. Very deadly stuff. Also, you notice there how the EX Run actually stomped on the opponent's feet? You can actually combo after that if you time it properly, but it's very tricky to do consistently. Sorry guys, I'm forgetting to mention some things, but yeah, Abigail's Nitro Run during the EX version actually has a low stomp. At least I think it's low, it may be mid. But it seems to be a low stomp that can be comboed after if timed correctly. But it's pretty tricky. Alright dogs, I believe that's it for his V system outside of his V reversal, which nothing special about his V reversal, it just knocks the opponent down, it's a bit slow on startup, but it's your typical V reversal. So let's move on to his critical art. The critical art has a crazy high vertical hitbox, so it's great for smacking the opponents out of the air, or for comboing after an air juggle. Very reliable super, does very good damage even when comboed into, so his super is actually very, very viable, especially since Abigail doesn't really need meter to do damage, he's a heavy hitter. So you can save that meter up like it's candy, and get your super combos in there for tons of damage. Look at that damage! And that's not even the most damage Abigail can do, it's just scratching the surface. The point is, Abigail has the highest damaging combos in the game, especially during V-Trigger. So man, he's a force to be reckoned with, especially with his critical art. Alright dogs, that's it for Abigail. I hope you enjoyed this guide. I actually don't have time for a full combo guide today, so here's some basic bread and butter combos to get you started. If you want some more advanced combos, or just a combo guide that's more in-depth, please check out Vesper Arcade's combo guide for Abigail. It's very extensive and it covers absolutely everything. It's honestly an amazing channel in general, so if you never heard of Vesper Arcade, please check him out today. I really hope you enjoyed this guide. If you did, please leave a like down below. And while you're down there, go ahead and post a comment too. Tell me what you think. If you want to support the channel and look good while doing it, please check out my t-shirts. And if you want to support the channel more directly, please check out my Patreon. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, because we have content on this channel every single week. It's never a dull moment on Underdog Gaming. So make sure to come back next time, and as always, stay underdogs.